What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pair Sports, bringing to you once again. We have the Lineup Builder Show. I'm here with my guy Rubio. Rubio, what is going on, my man? How are you doing? How has NFL Week 1 been treating you so far?
So I got a little bit back in the main slate. I was high on Puka, lower on Cup in the Sunday night game, but I did save myself. As soon as Ronnie Rivers got a carry in that game, I immediately hit Blake Corum's under rushing attempts live. And you know what? It ended up not being a bad Sunday because of that. You know, when you have free money on the table and you take it, things are good. And he did play a special team snap. So I was like, I was very much celebrating the win the entire night. But now we get a chance to, get high on the 49ers and Jets game. I think this is going to be a great game to watch. I mean, Aaron Rodgers being back, I'm really looking forward to see how he does, because what did we see from Kirk Cousins yesterday, AP? We saw a whole bunch of trash. I got to be honest. He looked terrible. And I'm really wondering if we're going to see Aaron Rodgers look very good at all, or if that Achilles is still bothering him.
Yeah, a lot of teams, shaking off the rust. It was kind of indicative, but masked a little bit for the Showdown slates that we've covered. I tweeted this out, and we talked about it before the show, but kind of an ugly week 1, and just using Showdown optimals as a simple barometer. Only 2 wide receivers have been captain optimal, and that happened in primetime Showdown slates. Jaden Reed, obviously, on Friday. Cooper Kupp last night. Shout out to JSU. Had the shipper. Absolutely loved to see it. I was a little sad because, and actually JSU had the same lineup. There was a lineup that was, I think it finished like 80th, 90th, right around there. And it was only duped 10 ways, roughly 10 ways. And I had that one. It would have been nice to hit. And Rubio, I know we just talked about this, but we could have had a solo shipper last night. The lineup that chopped and was duped a bunch of ways was not the optimal. The optimal was Kupp, Gibbs, Tyler Johnson. Is that who it is, right?
Yeah, Tyler Johnson. Yep. That was shocking too. And the reason why it was completely unique, one, Puka got hurt, helps everything, when it comes to uniqueness and stuff. But Jordan Whittington, we all thought would be, behind Demarcus Robinson or Tutu Atwell. No one thought Tyler Johnson, who barely made this Rams team, would be the one who would make such an impact on this team.
So it really is interesting. Like, if I were to ask you the question, looking at the week in its entirety, if we could go back to Thursday before the Chiefs game, and we're talking, and I said, Rubio, if I were to make a wager with you, I'm going to bet that we're going to see more defenses plus kickers as captain optimal over quarterbacks and wide receivers. What would you set the line for that to be? I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Plus 5,000 or something like that, especially the kicker part. They're rarely ever in the optimal captain. And you were telling me before the show, like, what, only 2 receivers made it optimal on captain?
2 receivers, 2 quarterbacks. The 2 quarterbacks were Josh Allen. Obviously, had to do everything himself. Baker
maybe?
Yeah. Jaden Daniels was not in the optimal for that specific game. That was. He was optimal in the flex, but he was not optimal. That game went off, and I think we had a value piece at I don't have that. No, okay, yeah, it was Baker was optimal, and Jaden was in the flex. 49.9K salary used. But as it stands right now, we have 3 kicker captains optimal. That was in the Atlanta game, the Vikings game, and the Dallas game, and then 2 defenses. Two defenses. So, which was the Bears game and it was the Panthers game where his kickers optimal. Vikings defense was optimal. So that's 5 combined kicker defenses versus 4 wide receiver, quarterback, and then the running backs actually smashed, and some dusty running backs actually smashed as well. Kind of just interesting. Now we're going into this game tonight where it has all the makings, all the feels as a potential defensive battle. At the same time, one thing I love, and I highlighted this last night, like one reason I love Rams showdown slates is their target tree is very defined. We know exactly what they're going to do and who is going to get the ball. We saw that last night. Cooper Kupp went absolutely off. Puka probably would have also went off, but, obviously got hurt. And we have the same thing tonight. Well, specifically on the 49ers side, we know typically what they're trying to do. Debo, CMC, Brandon Ayuk. So we have a relatively defined target tree on the 49ers side, and the Jets side will be interesting to break down. But let's get into it, Rubio. Let's go through. I got the base build up right now. We're looking at the captain optimals in our base build. So what is a base build? We do this each and every showdown show that we do. We are just using the standard projections that are set right now. We are running it, and we're sorting by highest projected score. We're doing this to get an idea of what the slate is going to look like, what roster construction is going to look like, and then we will build our show script. So what are you seeing here, Rubio? I mean, we got CMC, Breece Hall dominating the captain spots, followed by Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers. What's your takeaway right here?
I really like that build at the top. I'm a big fan of Conklin this year. Double quarterback is interesting. When you look at both pass defenses here, you're going to notice one trend. They're both very, very solid. The Jets were one of the best pass defenses in the league last year, and that makes me worried about one. Brandon Ayuk could be a little bit limited today. Also a terrible matchup for him. Debo, this isn't really the place to be. I want to say the Jets rank high in man, which is, goes against Debo. And you're just looking at it like, who do I pair Purdy with? Well, you can do it with McCaffrey. You could do it with a guy like Kittle and stuff. But one where you just have Purdy with no other weapon except a punt and McCaffrey is interesting. But I do like it. And I do think having a 200 punt today will be important. So you can kind of avoid maybe that, I don't know, this weak mid-range. Because like I said, I don't really love Debo. I don't really love Ayuk. I don't know how Rodgers' Achilles is going to respond. I don't know. I think that's a fine build. And if you punt, you can kind of avoid all that, especially for a safer route. I do think that it'll be higher on defenses, though. So it's no surprise that McCaffrey captain, especially after what I just said. Breece Hall being up there, too. I mean, I'm a big fan of the running backs tonight, AP. So the fact that we have both of them in these base builds, and if you scroll down even, there are top two captains, right? So on the right side there, I just want to see what kind of builds we're hitting. We get Juszczyk, 600. Probably, he's more of a guy you play in the playoffs, but it's all wanting the punt, huh? And I actually don't I don't hate that. I mean,
yeah, a lot of
mid-range build. There you go, kickers.
The kickers, yeah, it's a lot of, and this is where projections and certain game scripts are going to be interesting. Obviously, a lot of running back captain, and look, it's because CMC, Breece Hall, both projected to dominate from a usage standpoint. So I think that makes sense. Both defenses, very good, and it seems like one of those games that, I mean, we'll see how Rodgers looks. I would probably, I don't want to say some bold take or something like that, but I don't think he's going to come out and just show us something incredible or anything like that. I think he's going to be a solid game manager. I think he's going to find his talented skill position players. But that's, when you think about Rodgers and that final, those final few years in Green Bay, he wasn't putting up insane numbers. He was getting the job done, but it wasn't like that, we weren't constantly targeting him in DFS format. So I think the game manager just being smart, getting the guy, his skill position players, the rock is going to be kind of what we see tonight. But it's going to be interesting for sure. I think, as far as getting away from this, we could see, when I look at some of these other games that we've had this week, where we defense, captain, kicker, captain, I think it's more likely we see a kicker captain than and again, I'm not even saying I like kicker captain in this game. I don't think it's like a defense captain type of game. I like both defenses, but when you think about both quarterbacks, they're both risk averse. I don't think they're going to make a lot of mistakes like some of the bad quarterback play that we've seen through this week. So as far as crazy defense being captain, I don't know if I'm as high on it. The other thing too to keep in mind before going into our script build is we know the volume that the CMC is going to get, and we know the volume that Breece Hall is likely to get. So those things are going to be important. And getting off of kind of this base is going to be interesting because I really like how these base builds look. Any final thoughts before diving into our script?
No, I mean, I think you kind of covered it perfectly there, where it's going to be, I think, a game where I might be higher on the defenses even. That's why I'm really interested to see what these sims look like once we get done. I think I'll be bumping both the 49ers and the Jets defense just a tad. I mean, if you look at both situations, Trent Williams holding out, where he's going to be back to full go. Ayuk holding out. Looks like he'll be a little bit limited today. It makes me slightly worried on the 49ers front. I still think they win this game. And then you look on the Jets side, right? Aaron Rodgers, coming back from an Achilles injury. We've seen guys come back from an Achilles injury and look bad, just like Kirk Cousins yesterday, despite having numerous weapons, right? And these are two really good defenses in their own right. If you did wanted to avoid punting, and taking a 0, as we just saw, could be, I wouldn't say popular, but I do think, optimizers might push that if you have anyone with a good projection below 1K. That might be the route to do so. Get a kicker and a defense in there, and as ugly as it is, it's been working in week 1.
So hey, let's try something new, Rubio. Let's. I have this Team Stacks page up to kind of set our base script projections. Let's alter the. Let's take a macro view. Let's alter what we think is going to be the final score. So I know we always do that at the end, but what do you think? So we both kind of lean, maybe we see a sloppy game tonight. I don't have the stats up in front of me, but it seems like we probably saw more unders than overs. I know there's quite a few outlier games, Washington, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Philly. But it seems like we saw more unders hit. What do you have as far as winner and score-wise? What are you thinking? Like, I want to use this as kind of our new base. We'll adjust the projections on the other side. I think it's a neat way to approach SaberSim. So Jets, San Francisco, and the score prediction.
I would say, if I had to guess, just put a score on it, I would say let's do 24-17.
See, I wanted to get even a little bit more aggressive, like playing on the under script.
Yeah.
So 24. Let's go 20. And who do you have winning?
49ers.
49. Let's go 22-17. So just a slight bump down. I was going to say even get a little bit more aggressive, but I think this will be fine for now. So we got that changed. We clicked accept. Let's adjust them. SaberSim adjusted. So now we have our new baseline projections. Now let's go position by position, starting with the quarterback play. Let's hide this.
And that's a really good tool too. I use that a lot for MLB when I actually do play, is I do those team totals. And what I do is, depending on the stacks that you guys like and stuff, I bump up the stacks about a half run or a full run. And then I just do this SaberSim adjusted sometimes. And then I just run it because, if you're high on a team and whoever goes off in these games, like SaberSim adjusts for that or adjusts for the score. If your guys are lower on maybe like the Yankees or something like that. That's what I really like. It kind of just does the work for you.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to script and just wanted to stick to it. Like, what if we thought the 49ers would win like 31-10? You can adjust it to that too.
100%. And look, you don't want the exact same projections as everyone else. You want good projections, but you want to be unique. I use it a lot, especially for like baseball, bumping up half run, a run here, there, just to get me a little bit different off of where maybe the field might be if they're just using like average or aggregate projections out there. So it's something that I use quite a bit. And I'll look at in Showdown if I think we could get somewhat of a unique script. So we got the quarterbacks up, Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers. I feel like when I think about how this game could end, I honestly see past where maybe both quarterbacks fall under 15 fantasy points, like easily. I mean, it just with these two guys, we're not getting rushing touchdowns from them unless you get extremely lucky. And both could get vultured. We could see plenty of rushing touchdowns. So it's as far as pure passing volume goes, I mean, there are a lot of scenarios where I could see their final projection, their final stat be very in line with what we're seeing right now, or maybe even under that mark. What's your thoughts on Purdy and Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point too from Vincent Cano talking about, Rodgers is basically a full year removed. Kurt's like at time. Supposedly, Rodgers could have had a chance to come back for the playoffs and stuff, even though I think that was all placebo. this is one of the tougher matchups you'll have. I mean, 49ers are very good defensively. We know what they can do. You're going to want to, throw the ball on them at the very least because they were one of the best rushing defenses last year, only giving up under 90 yards a game on the ground. I don't know. I just have troubles coming with Rodgers because, like you said, his final year in Green Bay, he was not a good fantasy quarterback at all. And in fact, he was pretty bad. I don't think he had a game in the 20s in his final year at Green Bay. Expecting him to come back, do it differently in New York. I was higher on him coming into New York, but there's not a whole lot going in his favor right now. There's just not. You got Conklin, you got Garrett Wilson, you have some weapons there with Mike Williams, who's going to be on a pitch count too. I don't want to be a buyer on Aaron Rodgers early. I just don't. Then you flip it over to Brock Purdy, right? New York Jets, one of the best pass defenses in the league last year. They were second only, I think it was to the Browns, who were number one. 168 yards per game passing. They were really weak against the run. They gave up 124 rushing yards a game. It was 25th in the league. I don't really like going against Sauce Gardner and stuff like that. I don't. And you're going to have a weakened wide receiver core with, Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be limited. Deebo, who's, not great for this matchup at all. Ricky Pearsall's not going to play. We're running out of weapons here, AP. It's Purdy with Kittle and McCaffrey, who I could really like, be optimal in that sense. But I don't know. I like you just lowered both of them. I think that's the right move. I think buy on the running backs, selling the quarterbacks a little bit. And if I had to choose one, I'd definitely want Purdy over Rodgers, though.
Yeah, I agree with that take as well. Purdy gets there via kind of an extension of his skill position players just going off CMC, those kind of gadget plays with Deebo. And then, obviously Brandon Ayuk, he had many big games. But when you look at last season, and again, last season isn't, we're not saying it's everything. But it was the easier matchups. The easier matchups he smashed. The tougher matchups, he finished right around that 15. Kansas City, good defense last year, 15-4. Lions, good defense, 18-4. Green Bay, good defense, 15-4. In these tougher matchups, he was very consistently right around this 15-4, 15-5 kind of range. And I agree with you on Rodgers. So I like this take. I think this is fine, not getting overly aggressive on the quarterback position. Now let's get to the skill position players, because one thing that was interesting, so I don't have the optimals up yet. They will be after the show. I will flip them and they will be up on the site. But much like last night, so I tweeted that out last night about how Rams showdown slates, the target tree, very defined. We know what they want to do. And the thing about it and why the receivers pop so much and why we see them in optimal lineups so often is just the target volume and the defined distribution of where those targets are going. We get that too with the 49ers specifically. If you look at the optimal, it's just CMC, Brandon, Deebo Samuel. We know you don't even have to force in Purdy in there. It can be just a full on all skill position players with a kicker or maybe a defense in there. And so I like these type of slates where predicting where the volume and where scoring is going to be is somewhat more defined, if that makes sense. So let's get into the running back situation. Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, both projected, obviously massive target share for their teams. But can we be this aggressive with these two projections in this spot? What's your take on the running backs this week?
I think that both are right around where they should be. I think even Breece Hall could be higher. They are both the workhorses for this team. However, I do think McCaffrey's work could be scaled back a bit, which makes me think that Jordan Mason deserves a little bit of a higher projection, probably around 5 or so. He'd be a guy where, if you force my hand to play him, maybe hope for a big run or something like that. I don't expect him to get the goal line work. We know that McCaffrey was the touchdown god last year. But with McCaffrey, I'm slightly worried about the calf. I'm not completely worried. We think this game kind of goes under, so you're going to see a little bit of a softer projection probably across the board. But both these guys are studs. Breece Hall, we saw what he was capable of in the passing game too. There's a lot to like about these guys, and the fact is they get a bunch of work. McCaffrey gets a positive matchup here against the Jets. We do note that, especially wide receivers lined up out wide, the Jets were the very best at that, only giving up 61 yards per game to wide receivers who lined up out wide. So it makes you really want, Kittle or McCaffrey. So I don't want to sell on McCaffrey at all. I'll still buy, but I do think his workload is probably cut back to like a 70-30 split. I think Jordan Mason gets a decent bit of work today. 3K though, that's kind of expensive. Breece Hall though, I do think he gets 75-25, 80-20 kind of split, and his hands are just immaculate out of the backfield too. I'm going to buy on both these starting running backs. And if Braylon Allen wasn't like 2,800 or something like that, or Jordan Mason wasn't 3K, maybe a little bit cheaper, I could see playing them. But yeah, right now it's just the starters for me. It's not like Jordan Mason or Braylon Allen offer a skill set like Justice Hill over the past week saw when we went over that game on Thursday, where he's the pure pass catcher. They almost have a script where it requires the guy ahead of them, getting banged up middle of the game rather than getting there in the flow of the game.
Couldn't you also see just more dump offs from, as Rodgers is going through his progressions? I mean, I think if I'm him, we know what he's going to do. I mean, target Garrett Wilson if Garrett Wilson isn't there. I mean, he's got the other targets there, but the safety valve in Breece Hall. I was just looking, like how many Bijan Robinson, how many receptions or targets did he have? Had to be like
5 or 6 catches.
5 or 6.
It's worth noting too, like the 49ers were 24th in the league against backfield targets. So like that's where you kind of hit them at. Like if you're just looking at pure matchups, you want to avoid just pure runners against them. But Breece Hall's an exception because he's one of the best pass catchers at the position.
So I'm not trying to say like I'm under on CMC. He's still probably going to be our highest projected guy, but it's a huge price tag. I don't want to get crazy high on like Breece Hall too, but I want them more in line because I do think the volume is going to be there for Breece Hall. And I think with how this game could go too, I mean, in a trailing script, a guy like Rodgers, I would not be surprised if he just leaned on Breece Hall just in that, speed up, up-tempo offense, little dump offs. If his first reads aren't there, get it to Breece Hall, let him work in the open field. So I kind of want to just leave Breece Hall alone and bump McCaffrey down a little bit, bump Jordan Mason up a little bit. Is there anyone else? Braylon Allen, are we a little aggressive on him? Are you fine? Like he's the one I'm unsure of. Like I don't see his role being. I guess it's kind of unknown right now. We could assume.
We can't assume that we know the backup, as we saw yesterday with Ronnie Rivers getting snaps over Blake Corum.
Yeah.
But I do think Braylon Allen is the guy. I don't expect Isaiah Davis or Isaac Guerrero to be factors today at all. And I'm worried. Let's get him to 1.01. Yeah, 1.01 basically on both those guys. And I do think Juszczyk is fine too, but like 1.44. Because I think if they were at like 2 or something, they're going to be way more viable to hit on this, like on the Sims.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's get to our receivers. We'll add in the tight ends there too, because I do think it's interesting. Let's go team by team. Let's start with
let's start with the Jets here. I'd really want to get my spiel on the Jets here too.
All right, have at it, Rubio. What are you doing with the Jets receiving core?
49ers kind of average against the pass last year. They were more of a pass funnel for the most part. When you go back to the 2023 stats, they were actually weaker against the slot. And this is where it always sucks because, they had Zach Wilson as their quarterback for a decent bit. And I can't even remember the other guy who stepped in. What was it? Boyle. But really, when you just look at who was effective in the slot here for the Jets, that's what I'm really looking at. Slot alignment. It was Tyler Conklin and Garrett Wilson who actually had the most yards from the slot, with Conklin and Wilson being the only two who really did that exclusively. There's not a whole lot of other guys who really qualified either. So I would say, like, if you were just looking at it from, just Rodgers joining in on the mix and stuff, you could see potentially Xavier Gibson maybe play a little bit of the slot too. You also have Alan Lazard, who had a good preseason. Like, these are two guys who probably have a decent role today. I don't really want to buy in on Mike Williams because he is going to be extremely limited. Jeremy Rucker, it's just, Conklin's only 2,400 more. I don't really want to take a chance on Rucker. Malachi Corley, I don't really see these guys having a huge role. And that's what makes me like a guy like Xavier Gibson, who the coaches have had some positive praise for him in the middle of the preseason, in the middle of training camp. They were high on Gibson a little bit. So he's probably the guy I'm going to be buying the most AP. Like, I would actually get like Gibson and Lazard closer to Mike Williams. And Yeah, probably around 5, and then I'd kind of leave it at that. Maybe Garrett Wilson. I mean, he's the best bet to succeed from this room, but I do like Gibson and Lazard just a tad.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much in line with you. I've Garrett Wilson commanding just a huge potential projected target share here. 25 to 33% is kind of the range that I see with Tyler Conklin behind him.
Yes.
12 to 16% is kind of like the bubble that I'm working in, with Brees Hall getting some targets, obviously. And then, Allen Lazard and kind of Mike Williams right in line with each other. Obviously, Lazard's target's just a little bit different, but Mike Williams, just to hit on it, do you think he's irrelevant on this slate? Like, how limited do you think he could potentially be?
Similar ramp up period to Brees Hall, who barely had any touches in week 1 last year. I don't think Mike Williams plays a lot. I think 6,600 is a tall tag to pay for a guy who I think his projection was fine there. He's not going to hit anyway, but like it was 3 catches for 25 yards. Even if he gets into the end zone, you're just not worth it. So yeah, I'll be selling completely on Mike Williams. Clear fade for me.
Should we bump down any of these other the backup tight end, keep him where he's at? Is that fine?
Let's keep him. Let's get Gibson and Lazard into the 5s. Let's be overly aggressive on him. 5.5 and 5.
Who do you want? I don't have a take on these two specific players. Gibson higher.
Big on Gibson. I think Lazard, I think he's fine and stuff, but I think Gibson gets the ball in a lot of plays today. Not a lot, I should say, but I think he's a gadget guy. I think they'll get him the ball in space a couple times, and that could be enough. I mean, 2,400. What if he broke one big? He's got the speed to do it. I'm kind of high on Gibson today, especially at 2,400.
Okay, I like that. Let's go to Garrett Wilson. I know it's a tough matchup. The targets are still going to be there. We don't want to be like. I think
he's fine.
Big picture wise. It's hard to project anyone higher than CMC. We're down on C. So if that makes sense, we're down on CMC, but still, his entire role. You can't just make him like one of the lower projected guys. Like that's just fundamentally wrong. And I don't think we could make Garrett Wilson higher than him. So we got to keep him under that CMC benchmark. Are you fine with the 15.8? Higher, lower?
I mean, I think we got him higher than Rodgers, which is the important thing too. I really want him to be higher than Rodgers. He can get there in just pure volume. I'm very happy with Garrett Wilson being the highest receiver today.
All right, let's go over to the San Fran side. This is the side that I think is really interesting. Obviously, as we highlighted at the start, tough matchup, especially on the perimeter against this Jets defense. I think like the one area I may disagree with you is just with Debo, just because they can move him all around the field and they can get him work in many different ways. Like I'm higher on Debo than I am Brandon Ayuk. And then I think it's kind of an interesting Kittle spot where it's like Kittle actually ran a lot of routes, like highly volatile guy, but he ran a lot of routes last year. The production was volatile. You typically see him like come to life in these tough matchups is what it feels like. But what's your take on the receiving core for the Niners?
It's definitely Debo over Ayuk. I think Ayuk might be a complete fade. I mean, you're limited and you're going against guys like Sauce Gardner and stuff. That's a pretty brutal start to the season there. I'm surprised Ayuk didn't get the same sickness or hamstring problem that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase had. Maybe miss this one out if you're him. But this is just he got his money already, I guess, and stuff. But I look at it. I will sell completely on Ayuk. This Jets defense, especially out wide, is the best in the league by a lot. So I will not fiddle going against those guys. I think Debo's fine. You're right. He will be able to get in the backfield, play out of the slot a little bit and stuff. And that's where he succeeded. He got plenty of yards from the backfield last year, plenty of yards from the slot. That's fine. I don't want him to be higher than Purdy or Rodgers, really.
That was going to be my next question. Debo in relation to what we have for Purdy and for Rodgers. You don't think he should be in line or over them?
I don't think he should be over Purdy. Maybe Rodgers, because there's often the chance too where like they just line up at the 2-yard line and Debo gets the carry over McCaffrey. So you never want to just completely and you're exactly right about that Debo. Like he can get there in a variety of ways. It's not like he's just having to beat guys off the line and stuff. They can get him the ball in space several times. And He'll have the ability to do it. I just worry about, this matchup for him specifically. We want to target him against zone, and we know the Jets don't run a ton of that.
What about George Kittle? So when I look at tough matchups from last year, now I'm cherry picking, so keep that in mind. But Green Bay, 18-1. Baltimore, 22-6. I mean, he seemed to come to life at times in tougher matchups. Had a monster game against Cincinnati, huge game against Dallas. A lot of busts, okay? I'm cherry picking. I'm just pulling in the good results. I know that's not the best way to do it, but it seems like an easier matchups, like the Commanders. Like, I mean, their defense is absolutely horrendous and nothing, like zero, like he did absolutely nothing. So it's like, for me, I kind of have more interest in George Kittle in this matchup. What's your take on George Kittle tonight?
I am buying completely on George Kittle. 7,400 is a tall tag for Kittle, especially when he's only 1K less than Ayuk. But if you zoom out, like, he's their most effective guy in these type of games. And yeah, it's not just like, these tougher matchup stuff. That's like a legit thing. Like, he will shine when he has to. And he looked really good in the preseason. It was out only for a few drives and stuff, but he looks ready for the season. And with the Jets, you don't really want to target guys who are going against their corners and stuff. You want to do it with guys who are lined up in the inside, lined up in the slot. That fits the bill with George Kittle. I think 11.9. Let's get him up. Let's 12.5. Let's see if he hits captain at 12.5. Let's be overly aggressive on Kittle. And then it just becomes a little bit of a mishmash mess here because Jawan Jennings, he is what he is. He's a good wide receiver in this league. He's a great role player for the 49ers. He's not going to be hitting a lot of teams. Even if we got him up to 6 or 7, he wouldn't. Then it becomes like, who's playing after Ayuk if he's limited? Is it Bell? Is it Cowing? Is it Conley? Is Sauber getting a decent amount of work? Because he was hitting that, base build and stuff. This is where the question comes in. I'm trying to find it. Like, who's the direct backup for Ayuk if he's limited, right? Is it going to be, Ronnie Bell, who we saw be a factor at times last year? Or is it going to be Jake Cowing, who had a really good preseason there?
I think what we do is so they're all 200, okay? We don't need to get crazy with these guys, but there are builds where when you have two teams where you have a defined target tree, you have skill position players that, are pretty fairly consistent with what they do. You can have these builds where the 200 player will be viable in the flex. And I think it just becomes a mixing and matching game. So let's kind of put them all in a very similar range together, maybe even like the same. Like, who would you have the highest? Any opinion on that, or should I just make them all the same? Like Ronnie Bell, like these two for sure.
Let's do. I keep coming back to Chris Conley being a factor if needed. A veteran and stuff, and Ronnie Bell seemed to be a little bit on the chopping block potentially and not making the team too. So let's do Conley. Let's do Conley at like 2. Let's get these guys like at 2 because they're not both going to hit, right? Like 2 and 1.9, 1.8 style. 1.9 for Cowing and then 1.8 for Ronnie Bell.
Okay, I'm going to go.
The good thing about Ronnie Bell is he did it last year. He was optimal on a slate against the Giants, if we remember that. And he caught a touchdown, and he ended up being in the optimal. But even then, like, I think Conley is ahead of him, and I think Cowing might be a better talent. Maybe Shanahan throws the rookie in there.
I like that. Let's get to our defenses and kickers. Then we'll run this, and we'll see where we're at. What is your? It feels like we got Greg the Leg and Jake Moody. This definitely feels like a spot where kickers could be a little bit more volatile or viable. And it feels like another spot where maybe people get overly high on the defenses. What's your take on kickers and defense?
We're buying them. All right, let's get Greg at 8, Moody at 8.5. 49ers defense, let's be overly aggressive on them. Let's do 8.5. And then let's do the Jets defense at 6.5.
No, I'm going to fight back a little bit on the defenses because I think these two teams, I just think that they're going to play, like if you think about the two quarterbacks, Purdy had his moments where he was making quite a bit of mistakes. I just see them kind of coming in and playing it safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say Purdy had a few moments where, he was pretty good at taking care of the ball. He had a few games where it was pretty brutal. God,
I
what was
really
that
like
one game?
Purdy as a quarterback, but man, he can make some throws where you're like, oh, wait,
So,
like, where you cringe a little bit.
it
Six.
was
Can you
the
give me 6 on the Jets defense potential? Just 6.
yeah. It was just the game against Snyder's Ravens where he had 4 turnovers. That's the
Oh, he
one.
was
Outside of
terrible.
that game, he was pretty good at taking care of the ball. And Rodgers is not going to want to take a lot of sacks. Like Aaron Rodgers is not going to want to take a lot of sacks. So that's like my one caution on the defenses. So I'm gonna let's do this. Let's bring the 49ers down a little bit. Get them more kind of in line.
So are they missing? Who's missing out for the 49ers offensive line? Is it Aaron Banks or something like that? Is that he's limited? He's questionable. Spencer Burford's in, but Trent Williams is going to play too. So if Trent Williams was missing though, we'd be bumping him up real high. But he's
this is kind of egregious too. A $2,000 difference on these two defenses. In my opinion, it's such a random type of thing. But like this Jets defense is going to be really good. Should be able to get pressure on them. I know Purdy, as we just said, good at taking care of the ball. But I kind of think these defenses should be in line. I like being bullish on the kickers. Definitely a kicker viable type of slate. 8-5, 8-4. You good with those numbers?
Yeah, very fine with them.
And you're fine with the defenses there, even though I'm a little different than you. I think you have them a little higher.
I will be bumping them up a lot tonight, and that's just because we just went over the slate where it's like I don't really like Ayuk, I don't really like Mike Williams. Well, I don't really like these guys. I'll end up with a lot of defenses because of that.
Yeah, I got you. Well, let's bring back everyone. Let's run this. So give it one final overlook. So our running backs are the highest. I think that makes sense. Should we? So we have Garrett Wilson over Purdy. That was one thing that we talked about that we didn't want, right?
Yes.
Or more in line. All right, we'll go 15-3. 18-4. Yeah, I'm good with these. Anything that you see that we should? Really?
My bad. I was fine with Wilson being higher than Purdy, even. Yeah, just because I think if we're both kind of like not on the QBs today, I'm very curious to see if our top 3 projected guys aren't QBs, how often they hit.
Yeah, we're over on Kittle. I think this all looks really good. Let me bring in our contest in. We want the Millie Maker. Yeah. What do we say? 20 max and a single entry, right? Get a single entry in there and 20 max. All right. Let's go to our settings.
You do the same thing I do all the time. I immediately hit lineups on the right and stuff instead of immediately hitting the build tab.
It's been pretty. So since we've seen some crazy stuff, let's get the min salary really low. We want 150, and let's run it. So quick. All right. So talk me back through what you think the final score. You don't see any chance where the Jets get it done. I kind of like the Jets a little bit coming into this one. Even though the Niners probably take care of business.
Yeah, I think it would take the 49ers being careless with the ball. I mean, I don't really want to buy in on an old man coming back from an Achilles injury, trying to guide his team to victory.
I know.
Aaron Rodgers. It just feels gross. But at the same time, like the Jets defense is one of the best in the league. I think they can absolutely do it. One thing to add, just to interject, is I remember this. There's a few teams where you see far more 5-1s than other teams. The two, just doing these optimals now for a few years, there's 2 that really stand out. It's the Cowboys and it's the 49ers. So this is definitely a slate where I'm not Xing out 5-1s. I X'd out 5-1s for last night's slate and for the Green Bay slate on Friday. I just felt like both sides had enough skill position players where and I wasn't maxing it. I was running 35 builds. And so for my style, I wanted to X out the 5-1s. Tonight, I will not be doing that. I think it's extremely viable to have 5-1s in your builds, just with how the target tree and how the Niners operate. And we see it consistently. We see it. So let's sort by, what do you want to start with? The Millie? Yeah, let's do the Millie there. Did you run the contest sims yet? Oh, you did. Awesome.
Yeah. Yep, I did. Let's look at we'll start with captains. So we have a very diversified pool of captains, which kind of makes sense with how we have these projections set. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall dominate in the Millie builds, followed by Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. So I kind of like this. You get a few quarterbacks, very little CMC. What's your initial takeaway here on the captains?
I know we were selling on CMC just a little bit, but it's still shocking to see only 2 out of 150 making it in there. I think with the quarterback captains, I think tonight, personally, I'll be Xing both quarterbacks at the captain spot. Don't really love. I think if Aaron Rodgers got there, one of his guys would probably be in the optimal in the winner, or it'd be like Breece Hall and stuff. So I have no problem with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall being the highest. It is kind of like wild to see Deebo is the top guy, especially like 49ers wise in the captain. I was expecting it to be Kittle and then followed by McCaffrey, but since we didn't get a lot of McCaffrey and stuff, Ayuk still hitting a lot of captain too. It's surprising to me. Maybe did we sell McCaffrey too much? Like, what did we do?
Well, no, I think what's going to happen is I think he's going to dominate the. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
maybe the price tag is so high. Which again, now pricing matters. He was still our highest projected player overall. He just carries such a massive price tag, and so it is an interesting debate. George Kittle, our highest in the flex, 61%, 50% Purdy. Like the quarterbacks in the flex, I'm much more a fan of. It was very similar to last night. Rams and Lions. That's typically what you see when you look at the past few years of data. You saw not much Stafford and Jared Goff in the captain, but in the flex, along with, paired with their players, their skill position players, you typically saw them. So very similar in that regard. So I don't mind the ownership there. But yeah, we're not getting a lot of CMC. You know what? Here, let me try one thing. If we go to our single entry, we have to get more Christian McCaffrey here, right?
No, I think we got to bump. Let's do something like that.
Let's do this.
I want to show people the process for this. Is like, if I feel like I'm not getting enough of a player, like I'll bump him up and then rerun the contest sims. How much of the pool are we getting of McCaffrey, by the way? Like if you scrolled over to the right, how much in our pool of McCaffrey?
40%.
So that's fine. So give him one to 22. Let's just overly aggressive just to see where it would end up at, and then we can go back down to
25.
Yeah, 21.5. I just want to see how often he hits. Like how changing his projection by what 2.5 points there is what we did right then.
No, almost 3 points.
Almost 3 points. So
yeah, we probably were a little too under on him, but I mean, he does have such a massive price tag. If he did, I mean, yeah, he could. It's one of those things with McCaffrey where that first drive you're going to know. If he's just getting all the work out of the backfield and they're using him in so many different ways, you're going to be like, oh crap, like why did I do that? So
even 21.5 though, you're not getting that time. What is that in the captain? If
there you go,
check
22.9.
22.9. I'm shocked. Maybe the price tag is.
Well, no, I'm rerunning it right now. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what. Oh yeah, I should have checked the captain before I
imagine it was very minimal. I mean, you could still check it real quick right now, but
let's see,
6%.
Yeah, 6%.
And then now he is. Well, it's going to adjust here in a second, actually. 20. There you go. So if you get him above 22, now we're going to be reasonably in line with like. Wow,
we're still not crazy overweight on him. So I think that's interesting. It's like what's happening. Here's one thing too, though. I do like some of these 5-1s. You just see. I mean, we obviously. I mean, not having Breece Hall would be kind of a concern, but still, I don't hate it just from what we've seen from the 49ers. But the CMC, if you are too light on him projection wise, that could spell some trouble. So that's a good point there. What's your thoughts on some of these revised lineups? I think they're looking pretty good. Double kicker there. I don't hate that in this game script. We use all the salary, so it could be a popular build, but double kicker, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I'm not against that completely. Personally, I'll be Xing out like Ayuk, I think, almost entirely today. But I think that maybe that's it's really wanting you to go to the wide receivers. I think they are factoring in that McCaffrey's ownership is going to be crazy and there's still leverage and going against it, which is probably fair enough, and especially in a large field tournament. Conklin captain. Oh man, that it doesn't have Breece Hall doesn't have Breece Hall or McCaffrey. I was actually really excited for that one, and now I don't like it.
Let me bump up Breece Hall too. I think this, just from what we've seen in week 1, these running backs have been crushing. Let's just get a little overly. We don't need to get that crazy. That's probably pretty good. Who are we? Ayuk was who we were. Let's just say he has a bad game, right? Let's just adjust this further. Any other adjustments that we want to make?
No, I think it's fine. It's kind
Conklin. You liked Conklin. Let's get him.
It just pops out a little bit where it's like what I really wanted is just not. I'm not seeing it, and I think we did a good job with adjusting the script and stuff. It's just shocking to me, as I don't know. Maybe my thinking is wrong.
What is your thinking? What is it that you're wanting to see, Rubio?
I wanted both running backs. I didn't want the quarterbacks. I didn't want the wide receivers, and it's giving me the opposite of that. Like Garrett Wilson's the only wide receiver that I really even want tonight. So all that was kind of different to me. That's a build I can get behind right there. No quarterback build. Look at that.
No quarterback. Yeah, we got kick. Yeah, I could get behind that one.
I really like
a lot of 5-1s. It's incredible. No Breece Hall. All right, here you go. CMC Breece. There it is. There is the Rubio. Look at that. You got Gibson in there.
I can live, except it has.
All right. If you're watching this, if you want to dupe with Rubio, there's your build. CMC captain.
If you want to dupe with me, you're fading Devo, and then you're figuring out how to upgrade Mason, which might be 49ers defense.
You're fading Devo. Okay, you don't. Okay, I got you. Well, you can find someone else.
I will be, yes.
So Breece Hall, I like the Breece Hall ones too. This one also looks good. Here you go. Here's another good one. Kind of fits your mold.
4 Jets pass catchers in one build. Gotta respect that. I got 3, but if you don't want to include Breece Hall.
With no the thing is though, is 2 of them are cheap, so it doesn't take a lot for them to get there.
Yep.
And then you just need to make sure that it's all volume and not a lot of touchdowns. From Rodgers. Yeah. So this is a really interesting slate. I think it's another slate where we probably see not a huge chop. I mean, what's your take on that?
I think it would take the defenses to do better. I don't know. Defenses lead to a little bit more dupes, it feels sometimes. It would almost be chalkier in that sense. Kickers do too. Like if it doesn't chop a lot, I think it would have to be Gibson or Alan Lazard doing really well, or a 200 49ers wide receiver like Chris Conley or Jacob Cowing or Ronnie Bell. Like I think it would take one of those guys to do well for there to be a minimal chop tonight.
It's just so interesting. So it's really going to depend on what your script, because if we go back to the base and we're obviously sorting by highest projected, I mean, we're getting all CMC Breece Hall. And we both said we like that path. And then our script, which again, kind of an unders script, kind of a messy game, not a lot of turnovers, but more kicking. QB production, not super high. It's under on CMC specifically, not so much Breece Hall, obviously. So I think it has to be driven by price and ownership, right? With what the Sims are telling us.
I would say so. And like I was talking about earlier with like minimal chop and stuff, I guess the minimal chop could happen if Mike Williams or Brandon Ayuk caught one, and it was kind of forcing those two a lot more than I really wanted. So I want both running backs tonight. I don't want to get away from that. And that might be too chalky. I trust the Sims over myself, but man, this is a really bad matchup for Debo, for Ayuk. And looking on the Jets side of the ball, it's like you don't really know after Mike Williams who's going to be a factor. It's Garrett Wilson and Conklin, and then it's everyone else.
I love it that our lone kicker captain build is a 5-1. For some reason, the Sims are absolutely loving 5-1s tonight. So I will be Xing them out, Rubio, and I will laugh looking back tomorrow if it's a 5-1 build that ships. So
I'll X the Jets 5-1s. I'll keep the 49ers 5-1s.
Okay, see, that was going to be my question. What do you think is more likely, if a 49ers 5-1 or a Jets 5-1?
I think it would be a 49ers one. And the reason why is McCaffrey
Mike
get there
Williams is
if
dusty.
McCaffrey didn't get there, you know what? Because then it could I was just thinking it could be Kittle and stuff. You know what? I think Jets 5-1 actually might be a little bit more viable because you look at the Jets, they got Conklin, they got their own defense, they got Gibson, they got Lazard, they got 4 guys who are cheap enough there. Garrett Wilson's not overly expensive. Breece Hall is manageable to get, especially in a 5-1. Like, I don't know. I think the Jets have more paths to avoiding a 5-1 than the 49ers do, actually.
I think one thing that I'm seeing too from the base, the difference in the base build versus kind of our rescripted one, and because I'm like we're under on Mike Williams, we bumped him way down. Well, the mid range kind of sucks when you look at it, so it's kind of like this gray area. We might even have to just get even more aggressive. Like if you're fading Mike Williams, just with how weak that range is, maybe you got to take an even bolder fade, and maybe that's why the CMC and the Breece Hall captains for the base build were dominating. I kind of think that makes sense. So definitely one thing to consider, because what I was trying to do here was, all right, well, let's just take out Mike Williams and let's find a replacement. And we're not seeing, I mean, it would be a defense, right? Defense or a kicker. I mean, you could go double kicker. There we go. We're fine leaving salary.
I mean, I'm fine with that.
I don't hate that.
Yeah, and I guess there's another path. If you just leave a bunch of salary and stuff, you can get unique that way too.
There you go. A 3-3. A 3-3. We're leaving salary. Kicker captain. We don't have both running backs. Let's try this. Let's go. Now we're hand building, which I don't hate. We could go. We're trying to build your now it's not letting me click. Anyways, put CMC in there. You have what? A little bit of salary left. I think that could work. Yeah, that might be a hand building type of night to get the Rubio dimes built.
Yeah.
All right, Rubio, let's give our final thoughts and let's get out of here. So you have the 49ers winning. You said what, 24-17?
Yeah, 24-17.
24-17. Who is going to be your most important player tonight?
My most important player tonight, it's easy to say the studs. I actually think I'll have a lot of Tyler Conklin tonight. If Conklin does well, I think it sets up for the rest of the build. You see that top build on the right there, which after much influencing of what we did with the original projections stuff, no quarterback build there with maybe Breece Hall for Garrett Wilson, which is easily fittable since it leaves 1,800. I'll be looking at those style of builds tonight.
Yeah, I like that. I have a 20-17 low scoring game. I think my two most important players, I say two just because how I see the game script maybe going. Breece Hall on the Jets side and then George Kittle on the 49ers side are going to be my two most important. As of right now, it could change. Obviously still dialing in my own stuff, but those would be my two most important players. And then I would also lump in the kickers in there too. I think it's going to be a nice kicker captain slate. Rubio, tell the people about all the other content that we have coming up later today. I've not looked at the schedule yet, but I think that you probably have a better idea of it than me.
Yeah, there is a Print Factory tonight at 3, or today at 3. I believe it's at 3. That should be free as well. And then you'll also potentially have a Showdown Kings thing. I actually don't know, AP, if we're having that one or not. But you have a bunch of content on the site as well. You got the NFL 3 Max strategy, which will have K. Fowler, JSU, and Mangone's takes on it, along with a breakdown for each kind of build core that they're going with, kind of explaining their thought process. You have Big T's player pool, and then on the playbook as well, you get JBC, Wiley, and Bryce Morrow, our third and schlong, our guy who's been absolutely crushing. You'll get their thoughts on that too. Then a bunch of core plays too from, guys like, I think all of us, right? Like me, you also have like Bobby Hare on there, along with like, your usual guys like Big T, JSU, JBC, and that too. So a lot of fun to be had tonight.
And Snyder is on the article for tonight too. So Snyder will be doing our Showdown article. Showdown is just massive. It's a ton of fun. I really like it. Like last night, I like those slates last night where I feel like they're a little bit more predictable. We always say that, and you never know until they pan out. Tonight, it's like it could go a bunch of different directions. So the one thing I'll keep leaning back on is we know the target trees for the Niners. and we have an idea of what it should be for the Jets. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin. So lean on that. Even if it's a low scoring game, lean on the guys that are projected to get a lot of work, a lot of volume, and you should set yourself up for success. And don't forget about the kickers would be my final 2 cents there. So with that in mind, for Rubio Dimes, I'm AP. Good luck tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate it a lot over here at Run Pure Sports. And as always, Run Pure.